This edition of Monocle on Saturday was first broadcast on the 7th of December 2024 on Monocle Radio. Hello, I'm Georgina Godwin, broadcasting to you live from Wodehouse in London. This is Monocle on Saturday. Coming up on today's programme, we'll have a look through the week's news and culture with political analyst and writer Charles Hecker.
Good morning, Georgina. We're going to be looking at the collapse of the presidential electoral process in Romania. We'll look at the reconstruction of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and we'll find out who some of the most stylish people are of 2024.
Then I'm going to speak to the creators of Grand Theft Hamlet, a film made entirely within a video game. Plus, it's Christmas Market Day in Zurich. We'll cross to Dörferstrasse 90 to hear what's going on. That's all ahead here on Monocle on Saturday with me, Georgina Godwin. First, though, here's the news. Syrian rebels say they seized control of the southern city of Daraa today, the birthplace of the 2011 uprising against President Bashar al-Assad, and the fourth city his forces have lost in a week. Rebel sources say the military agreed to make an orderly withdrawal from Daraa under a deal giving army officials safe passage to the capital, Damascus. Romania's top court has annulled the ongoing presidential election after accusations of Russian meddling and ruled that the entire process, which had been due to conclude this weekend, would have to be rerun. Analysts say the court ruling may erode institutions, trigger street protests and ultimately still endanger the nation's pro-Western course. Ghana is holding a presidential and parliamentary election today amid hopes for an economic revival after the worst financial crisis in a generation, which led to a major debt default in the West African nation. Approximately 18.7 million out of Ghana's 34 million population are registered to vote in the poll, which analysts say holds significant importance not only for Ghana, but also for the entire region, where democracy is under scrutiny. And 5.5 years after the devastating fire, Notre Dame in Paris reopens today. President Emmanuel Macron will be joined by US President-elect Donald Trump, Prince William and other international figures as he seeks to present the renovated cathedral as a symbol of France's inner reserves of creative strength at a time of economic and political turmoil. And that's your Monocle Radio News. Hello, welcome. Very pleased to be with you this morning. I'm Georgina Godwin. Charles Hecker is my guest. He is a political analyst. He's an author. His book is Zero Sum, The Arc of International Business in Russia. And it just came out recently. Charles, I imagine your life over the last few weeks has just been book.
Good morning, Georgina. It has been exactly that. It has been a bit overwhelming, a bit of a whirlwind. It has been nothing but the book from sunrise to sunset every day now for the past several weeks. It's exciting. It's a bit nervous-making, but everything about it, from my perspective, is new and different. Every day I'm doing something I've never done before, ever, in my life, and I'm almost getting used to it.
I'm loving seeing you on this journey and just how much fun it is. Just for listeners who haven't yet been plugged to death about this book, just reiterate what it's about.
So Zero Sum is in a sentence, it is the story of one of the greatest experiments in global commerce. And that is the opening in 1991 of the Russian market and its very, very messy closing in 2022 with the start of the war in Ukraine. And it is about the adventures in capitalism of international investors in Russia, how they rushed in with a gold rush mentality at the beginning of this cycle, and how many of them left with their tails between their legs when the war kicked off.
And we are going to be talking about this on Meet the Writers. We haven't done the interview yet. It's going to be next week once I've finished it. I'm in the middle of it right now. And just speaking of Meet the Writers and Monocle, I don't know if you've seen the latest edition of Monocle magazine. You really must. It's our bumper December-January issue. And in it, there's a whole series entitled Essays, with some essays by some wonderful writers, including Lindsay Hilsum, who, of course, is that wonderful broadcast journalist for Channel 4, and Ava Glass, who is an ex-spy and now a thriller writer. They've both got great essays in the magazine, and I just wanted to point out that if you like those essays, you should dive into the Meet the Writers archives, because there are interviews with both of those writers on Monocle Radio. Charles, so Russian business and Russia's business. Russia seems to think its business is everywhere, including Romania.
That's right. We've got quite a spicy review of the events of the previous week and some of the coverage in the papers today. And so we're going first to the FT, which talks about what's going on in Romania. And that is that essentially the Romanian Supreme Court has ruled that the first round of Romanian presidential elections, which happened just a couple of weeks ago, are invalid. And it has suspended the second round of the anticipated elections. And that is because the Supreme Court produced evidence that it believes shows that through the manipulation of social media, Russia has influenced the outcome of the election. It is highly unusual for a Supreme Court to essentially say, we are starting from scratch. The elections are invalid. This has significantly destabilized Romanian society, so much so that the president of Romania came on to the television just yesterday. Klaus Iohannis reassured his fellow citizens. He reassured the European Union. He reassured the investor community that Romania is a stable and secure country and that there is no reason to doubt the democratic process. All of that said, what happened was the first round of elections went surprisingly and convincingly towards a fairly right-wing pro-Russia candidate called Călin Georgescu. He is a public fan of Russia's President Putin, and even though he won comfortably over a Elena Lasconi, who is a far more liberal presidential candidate, even though he won comfortably against her, the public reaction to his first-round victory was sharp and strongly against, and now the Supreme Court has weighed in. And so here we have a member of the European Union that has basically thrown a ballot out the window and is completely starting from scratch.
A fascinating story, which we'll be covering a lot in the week ahead. Charles, it's been a huge news week, actually, hasn't it?
That's right. For people who follow current events fairly closely, like you and me, Georgina, it has been a week and a half. And what happened in Romania this week comes on the heels of the collapse of the French government this week. It comes on the heels of renewed rebel activity in Syria that is now headed rapidly towards Damascus. And, of course, it comes in a similar move to Romania in South Korea, where the President Yoon Suk-yeol there decided he was sort of unhappy with the way politics were going in his country, and he decided to throw the government out the window by declaring a state of martial law. That martial law declaration only lasted about 6 hours and was overturned by the country's legislator and also by the thousands and thousands of South Koreans who came out and protested in front of government buildings. But really, when you think about this in the bigger picture, what's happened over the past week, on top of existing crises in the Middle East and between Russia and Ukraine, has made this quite a peppery sort of week.
Oh, it absolutely is. I'm just checking quickly to see, because South Korea is having a meeting right now to see if the president is going to be impeached. It was due to start, I think, an hour ago. And yeah, no, there's no update yet, but we imagine that is going to happen, right?
It's looking fairly likely because it will take a 2/3 majority of the South Korean legislature. They are just a small handful of votes short of that number. All they need are a few people from the ruling party to join them. And in fact, just yesterday, the head of the ruling party, in parallel to President Yoon Suk-yeol, the head of the ruling party said that he supports an impeachment battle. So you can imagine that there will be a significant number of defectors from the ruling party to the now building majority to seek Yoon Suk-yeol's exit from office.
Yeah. Now, of course, that's been hitting the markets as well, damaging the markets. markets. France, too, is in dire economic straits. We're seeing this all over the place. Another story, and this really harks back to your book, actually, is that Carlsberg, the huge Danish brewing company, has left Russia.
That's right. So this is a piece that's all over the business press and the mainstream papers over the past few days, and that is that Carlsberg, which is a flagship Danish company and one of the world's largest brewers, is finally exiting Russia in an extremely painful transaction that sees it leaving its market-leading position in Russia, and it's getting about $322 million for the deal. Carlsberg went into Russia gradually and then suddenly in 2004 and then 2008 with the acquisition of Baltica, which is Russia's largest brewery. So Carlsberg was a market leader there. What's happening is it is selling the company to its management in Russia. This comes on the heels of the fact that Carlsberg was seized and nationalized and put under temporary administration by President Putin last year. And so there was a risk that Carlsberg was going to leave Russia with absolutely nothing to show for it. So they have squeezed out this transaction. Carlsberg wanted to leave Russia on moral grounds at the beginning of the war against Ukraine, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. But as companies want to leave the Russian market, Putin is making it extremely painful for them. Carlsberg will take a major hit to its bottom line. It will take a huge reputational hit. And the question is, you have to wonder whether one of the world's leading brewers and this prime Danish company will ever go back.
Carlsberg, as you say, is a Danish brand. And I want to stay with Denmark, the Prince of Denmark, Hamlet. But Hamlet as you've never seen him before, inside the video game Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Hamlet is the brainchild of Pinny, Grylls, the award-winning documentary filmmaker, and partner acclaimed actor and video artist Sam Crane. They're both on the line right now. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Sam, for people like me who are woefully ignorant, could you just give us a very, very brief outline of what Grand Theft Auto is so we understand where your work comes into it?
Okay, thanks for having us on, by the way. It's really nice to talk to you. Grand Theft Auto is a video game. It's an online video game. So where people go in normally to kind of do heists or rob banks or just go around shooting people. But it's also this kind of space, this video game space that you can go into and hang out with friends and like socialize and kind of do whatever you want. It's like the setting is like a kind of fictionalized version of Los Angeles, and it's incredibly beautiful, very violent, and a lot of fun.
And within that, you can then start designing your own sort of little world. So tell me, Pinny, how this came about.
Well, Sam was out of work. It was lockdown. He's an actor, and the theatres had all closed, and it was all looking like pretty bad, actually, if I'm honest. And then he was sort of playing a lot of computer games with his friend Mark, and they discovered this on Theatre, which was a sort of like copy of the Hollywood Bowl, but it's called the Vinewood Bowl, inside the game. And obviously their avatars discovered it, not them. And they kind of thought, well, why don't we try a little bit of Shakespeare here? And that's what they started doing. And various players turned up and tried to shoot them and were quite violent and didn't really want to listen to 500-year-old poetry. But and the other people, some people actually turned up and put down their guns and listened. And it was something quite extraordinary. It was also very, very funny. And I was watching this from behind. I'd never played computer games. I was a bit sniffy about them, to be honest with you. And I thought, you know what, I quite like to design my own avatar and sort of jump in with them and sort of like have some fun. And then when I went inside, I thought, you know what, I could actually make a documentary about this. And they then thought, well, you know what, we might try and put on the whole production of Hamlet live inside this game and try and recruit people, try and, approach people in the game and see if they wanted to be in the show and, have auditions.
So we'd, kind of like have to go up to, because normally people come up and shoot you. So we'd have to go, no, please don't shoot us. Do you want to come and audition for our production of Hamlet we're doing?
Yeah, so it was a good gambit, good opener.
Some people did.
And some people actually did.
Yeah.
And I was just sort of like recording the whole thing. So, because you can record your game feed, as you can see on a lot of YouTube is full of people playing games. And so that's what we started doing.
It's absolutely fantastic. What a brilliant story. And now you're up for multiple awards.
Yeah, we've got the BIFAs, the British Independent Film Awards, tomorrow, which is really exciting. They're like a brilliant award that celebrate, what it says, independent film, British independent film. So
for 4 actually.
Yeah.
But my favourite one is the Maverick, because there's like an award for people who are a bit doing crazy stuff. So we're up for that one, and I'm looking forward to that. We get that one.
It's such an extraordinary thing about merging these centuries-old texts with this very, very modern tech.
Well, it's interesting, you see, because they seem like, at first glance, you think these things are completely poles apart. But I hope when people come and see the film, they realise that they're actually strangely, deeply connected. And there's a real kind of resonance between the two worlds, Shakespeare's version of medieval Denmark and this extraordinary video game.
I mean, I really thought when I was going around Los Santos, which is the sort of fictionalized version of Los Angeles, I thought this is the rotten state of Denmark, because it's kind of like a place which looks really blingy and really sort of, kind of cool and everything, but it's actually, underneath it all is this kind of homelessness, and there's rottenness, and there's people trying to steal each other's stuff all the time. It's a nasty side of humanity.
Which is very evident in Hamlet as well.
Yes, absolutely. So where can we see this film?
Well, it's on general release now. So if you go to grandthefthamlet.com, there's a whole list of where the screenings are. And it's all over the country. So we just opened in Hackney Picture House last night. It's a lot of Picture House cinemas. The Glasgow Film Theatre, I know. It's going to be on in Edinburgh.
In Ireland, actually.
In Ireland. It's going to be like all over the place. And if you can't see a screening local to you, then you can get in touch with your local cinemas and say, hey, why aren't you showing this film?
And Pinny and Sam, I have to tell you, you've succeeded in doing something nobody has ever done for me before, which has made me the tiniest bit interested in video games.
Well, that's great. It's interesting, you see, because I think video games do sometimes get a bit of a bad rap because they're seen as violent spaces just for like teenage boys, but actually there's a whole world there that can be very sophisticated and beautiful. And we think the video games, there's no reason why it shouldn't be considered as valid a cultural art form as anything else.
And you know what, Georgina? I was exactly like you. I was completely cynical about them. I did not say you're cynical, actually, but I'm just saying I didn't know anything about them. But I was cynical, and I thought, oh God, I don't really want to know anything about this world. It looks really awful. But I was amazed at how sophisticated they were and how satirical and beautiful.
Like the world in Grand Theft Auto is incredibly beautiful.
I cannot wait to see it. Thank you both so much. That's Pinny Grylls and Sam Crane. It's called Grand Theft Hamlet. If you can't see it on at the cinema, get in touch with your cinema, as they say, and make them show it. I'm certainly going to be doing that. Thank you both very much. Charles, weren't they absolutely delightful?
It's a hugely compelling story, and the smash up of auto theft and Hamlet, and especially Los Angeles and Denmark, is this sort of dysfunctional utopia that is a place I think I want to visit.
Absolutely. Well, let's go from Prince of Denmark to Prince of Wales. He's at the opening of Notre Dame today.
Speaking of dysfunctional utopias, we're going to France. So you're right. There is the grand reopening of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. The cathedral, of course, was destroyed in a catastrophic fire in 2019. President Macron will be the master of ceremonies in the reopening of the cathedral, of course, timed to coincide with the collapse of his government. Perhaps he will acquire a certain halo as a result of this reopening, but it is bound to be short-lived. The list of dignitaries here, Georgina, is what is the most curious about all of this. And so not only is Prince William attending to represent the royal family and represent the United Kingdom, but President Macron has invited Donald Trump to attend. And he will also be there at the same time as First Lady Jill Biden. I imagine that they will be very carefully choreographed to avoid each other in Paris. But it's interesting that somebody who is not quite yet the head of state has been invited to a ceremony that includes mostly other heads of states. There will be dignitaries and celebrities of various stripe. But you have to think Georgina, that inviting the president-elect to the reopening of Notre Dame is a bit of courtship. And is a bit of an attempt to seek to influence the president, who is threatening all kinds of tariffs and who's threatening a forced peace in Ukraine, and who promises to be an extremely disruptive political and geopolitical force. And you can just see the global jockeying for position around President Trump. Macron's done this in the past. He invited him to a Bastille Day celebration. President Trump has not had very nice things to say about Paris and France recently. And so we'll see how this goes.
Macron's very pro-NATO. He'll be pushing that agenda, won't he?
That's right. That is a losing proposition. I think the likelihood that President Trump, for example, would invite Ukraine to join NATO as part of a security guarantee in, let's say, ceasefire negotiations that may begin at the beginning of a Trump administration, I think that's highly unlikely. You're right. President Macron, in fact, has volunteered to send French troops as peacekeepers to Ukraine. They will have to resolve that tension before the two of them can move forward on anything approximating a Ukraine peace agreement.
Now, I see here that the Prince of Wales is also expected to meet Trump, and that's very interesting. Apparently going to be discussing the importance of the US-UK special relationship.
That's right. I think that President Trump has a softer spot for the UK than he does for the for France, and particularly for the European Union. He's delighted that the UK left the EU. He was also a guest at a state dinner at Buckingham Palace, including that very famous walkabout where he nearly trampled Queen Elizabeth. Better relations with the UK. Prince William will need to be on his guard because President Trump wants to make the UK a bit of a piggy in the middle in negotiations between the US and Europe. He's hoping for a closer relationship. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that he's not going to choose sides in that relationship, knowing that his biggest trading partner, the EU, is much closer geographically than the US.
So lots of very stylish people in Paris this weekend for that opening. And of course, style has manifested itself in many forms over the last 12 months. So says the opening of this article from the New York Times, which is lauding the 63 most stylish people of 2024. Who's on it?
A lot of people I've never heard of before, Georgina, but the list opens with glitterati like Coleman Domingo, major sort of celebrity of both film and stage, discussing his dress sense and how Coleman Domingo has come to any number of awards ceremonies over the past year, but has avoided wearing a traditional tuxedo. And so there's a sort of four-picture spread of Mr. Domingo wearing all kinds of very formal-looking outfits that are not as formal as a tuxedo. I have to say that he does this quite successfully.
Oh, he looks fab.
Yeah, doesn't he? And there are men, and there are women, and there are couples, and there are tall, skinny, light, dark, heavy, fit people of all description, really, from the very top to the bottom of the list. There are young people, there are old people, and there's Daniel Craig in the middle of it all.
Who's really one of the few straight white men on the list.
That's right.
Which is quite striking, right?
It's an extremely diverse group of stylish people who are stylish for all sorts of different reasons. And I have to say that absolutely none of it comes across as tokenism. It all comes across extremely legitimate. These people hang together quite well. The photography is absolutely lush. You will sort of find comfort in seeing familiar people like Beyonce on this list. But then you will be stretched a bit when, at least, from my perspective, you see someone called Renee Rapp on this list, and you'll forgive my ignorance for not knowing exactly who she is, but she is a very stylish individual indeed. She's apparently part of the cast of Mean Girls, and has fronted festivals like Lollapalooza, which, to the best of my knowledge, is a music festival.
It is what they call a music festival, I believe. Charles, stop being so po-faced about it. You know exactly what Lollapalooza is. Why is Demi Moore back in the list?
So Demi Moore has had a career resurgence. She is a Hollywood survivor who had phenomenal stardom early in her career. and then went through a bit of a fallow period. She's back with a movie called The Substance, which opened to rave critical reception. She looks fantastic. I think she's a survivor. She's dedicated wife of Bruce Willis, who of course has had to retire as a result of chronic illness. She stayed by his side. She's here in a pair of very Anna Wintour looking specs, dark sunglasses, and she's clutching the tiniest of chihuahuas to her chest. We're told by the New York Times that her chihuahua is called Pilaf. It's one of several animals that makes an appearance in this list.
Also, can we talk about Charlie XCX and Brat Green?
Yes. So Charlie XCX figures very prominently in this list against a backdrop of that particular sort of citrusy, limey, bright green that became the color of the year. The expression brat became the word of the year, although not coined by the Oxford English Dictionary, which recently said that brain rot was its word of the year. But of course, brat summer and being brat was something that Charlie XCX actually managed to work into the presidential campaign of Kamala Harris. So she is prominent in this, and I would guess, based on her popularity, that she's going to be in this list for some time to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Charles, thank you very much for that. Now, another style guru, that's according to Forbes, reporting on the international travel market that's just been taking place in Cannes, is our very own editorial director, Tyler Brulé. And we are going to cross over now to Zurich to speak to him and Juliet Linley. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Very nice to hear from you, Georgina. And yes, indeed, Juliet's also here as well, pulling up her trousers.
Morning, Georgina.
She's preparing for radio.
I'm
putting on the headphones and pulling up trousers.
You had the trousers on already, though,
They were already
right?
on. She's just hiking them up a bit. Anyway.
My image is just going down the drain rapidly.
Anyway, as you can hear, Christmas market. This is, I was going to say it's edition one. It's edition one actually across the world because Tokyo is just wrapping up very shortly. It's almost 6:30 in Tokyo. Toronto is going to be starting in about, I guess, 5 hours from now as well. And Zurich is in full flow. Juliet, you've been wandering the rooms here, talking to a lot of course, the various stall holders.
Yes, I've been perusing all the stands. It's so fun. I have to say I'm surprised. There are a lot of vintage stands this year, Georgina. Sort of interior decor things from the 50s and 70s, as well as Portuguese cold-pressed olive oil, not to be compared
are you
to
upset?
Tuscan olive oil.
You heard that, Jude. She's upset about that because why isn't there an Italian? Where are the Italians?
There actually is one bottle of Italian oil because there is also a stand selling Tuscan wines.
Okay.
And they have a bottle of oil, but they've hidden it because they didn't want to compete with Portugal. And then you've got, of course, our favorite Round Rivers recycled PET bottles turned into a puffer jacket. In summer, it's swimsuits, and in winter, they've got...
Any swimsuits for you? Because you're heading to Brazil soon.
I am, but they don't. I just asked him. No, but a lot of very warm puffer jackets. I can't see you in a puffer, though, Tyler.
Yeah, I'm not very puffer jacket. No. Anyway, I mean, listen. I mean, I could be persuaded. Maybe.
Could you?
Maybe we can. We will.
Bring him
we'll
on
see.
air.
Yeah, or open the Tuscan wine.
And usually there's lots of gorgeous things to eat and drink, as well as Tuscan wine.
Yeah, this year we've done something new. We have a little bar, sort of almost like a little privé, sort of speakeasy out the back. This is an area that you'd be familiar with, Georgina, where there's an array of ashtrays. But this is
smoking terrace.
It's your smoking terrace. Still a smoking terrace, but there's also there's champagne, and it's just going to be a cozy little corner in the back. And then, of course, listen, this is Switzerland. Of course, raclette, and that's chocolate as well, and of course full bar open and everything else. And I have to say, it is quite buzzy. It's just it's just gone 10:30 here, opened 30 minutes ago, and it's rammed actually.
It's rammed. This is really rammed. And there's also panettone. There's a French brand of panettone.
Fantastic.
I don't think we're big fans of panettone, are we?
We are not. Are you? But what about your household?
No, I know that it's a tradition, but it's one of those things that take it out of its context. And if you didn't grow up with it, it's really hard to embrace.
And it takes up a lot of space as well.
But
because those enormous panettone boxes, right? Yeah.
But I must tell you that last year there was a panettone maker there, and he'd made one out of sourdough, and he gave me one, and it was the most delicious thing. So,
okay, is this the same? I have to find out if this is the same vendor.
It was either French garde-manger.
Yeah, we have COS here as well. That's not the Swedish fashion brand, COS, CAUSSE, who are one of France's most respected glove makers. They're next door at Trunk. And they're doing custom glove fittings as well. Obviously not à la minute. You have to, of course, order them. But they're here. And then, of course, yes, there's, as Julie said, it's nice that there's a vintage array. Our Brenda Toohey is here as well. Georgina, of course, she'll be at the London Market next week. But she's here with her Knightsbridge Rocks
Diamonds
collection.
and pearls from the 50s
gorgeous.
upwards.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
And back to the gloves. Everyone loves a nice pair of driving gloves, don't you feel?
They do. I mean,
Right?
I love gloves.
Are you ordering the crocheted? What color?
I'm not doing a driving glove.
But,
no.
I
Tyler,
was going to get
bought-
you them for Christmas.
Tyler,
Yes.
you bought some great gloves. I think it was at the last Christmas market. They were lined with fur, weren't they?
Yes, they were, and I have to figure out where they are, though. But yes, they're somewhere. What I liked about this, they were just a little bit higher. They were sort of like for snowball season as well.
Right.
I always hate when gloves.
Don't you hate
when they
when-
sag? Sort of. Yeah.
They get right into
No,
your wrist.
Like
no
your
good.
trousers, Juliet.
Buy me a belt, Tyler, please.
Yeah,
Buy me a
we'll
belt.
get you out. Georgina, how's everything in London today?
It's stormy and wind-lashed. And
I mean, listen, there's weather alerts I saw all across Western France. I know UK fully under weather alert. I think it's supposed to rain here a little bit later, but so far so good. It looks it's actually rather dry. They said it was going to start. It was supposed to be raining by now, but we're avoiding it. So yeah, I don't know how fast this. What's it? Storm Darren? What's it?
something like that. Well, me and David Stevens are just going to hunker down in the studio here for the rest of the morning, I think. We've got lots of work to do, and we're going to let the storm rage outside while we're warm in here making beautiful radio and listening to some great tunes. Tyler, before you go, do you have a special request?
Of course. This is the time of year. This is really sort of, I would say, the official kickoff of Christmas season on Monocle Radio, across the Monocle world as well, we should say. As we just mentioned, of course, Christmas market will be in London next week, next Saturday and Sunday. Lots of course, your favourite Monocle staffers who are not London-based will also be descending on London as well. I'm sure this song will be played out many, many times before that. This is Tatsuro Yamashita with Christmas Eve.
Tyler Brulé, Juliet Linley, thank you very much indeed. And that's all for Monocle on Saturday. Thanks to our producer Desiree Brandley and our studio engineer David Stevens. Many thanks to my guest Charles Hecker, and of course, as I say, to Tyler and Juliet and our Grand Theft Hamlet people. Wonderful film. I'm definitely going to see that. Monocle on Saturday will return next weekend. We'll be live from our Christmas market here at Midori House. I'm Georgina Godwin. Thanks for listening.